Welcome to Prepare for Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or a rising entrepreneur. And this week, we have the privilege of sitting down with four-time Olympian, first American woman to earn a medal in the Winter and Summer Olympics, 3 medals to be exact. Give it up for Lauryn Williams. Lauryn, what's going on?
So much for having me on the show. I was like, you get to be either or. I was like, I feel like I'm kind of both. Like, do you get to be a proven professional in the Olympic world? I mean, I think I'm a proven professional in my finance field as well, but also an entrepreneur. So,
Oh, absolutely. You wear both hats and you wear them very well. I was an athlete. I didn't necessarily ascend, to the levels in which you did. I know you won a gold medal in the 4x1, and I was on the 4x1 team, and we won state, but we didn't make it. We didn't make it beyond that.
But you should be proud of every accomplishment that you have made over the course of your life. So go ahead and pat yourself on the back for being the state champion in the 4x1 in whatever town, city, even if it was the middle of nowhere, you did it.
What led you to sports and what was the age that you started running?
Yeah, so I got into sport. I mean, I was an active child, bouncing off the walls, going outside to play like everyone else. And, if we really talk about how I got into track and field as a career, my mom would tell you that I got home faster than the family German Shepherd one day, when she sent me outside to play. You got to be home before the street lights come on.
Right.
And I was hustling down the road, and she's like, wait a minute, hold on. She got home faster than a dog? Like, this is crazy. My dad, on the other hand, is like, hey, we were at the Carnegie Science Center. We were racing. There was a FloJo hologram, and I spent the whole day racing the FloJo hologram. Didn't see anything else at the Science Center. Finally beat the hologram. I don't think it was set at world record pace, of course, but my dad was like, okay, we're on to something here. So there's 2 different stories about how I got into it. But one thing I do remember, to your point about just like being around and setting goals, is I was the fastest in my neighborhood. And then I started racing boys my age, and I was faster than them. And then I started to race boys that were a little bit older than me. And a friend of mine, her brother that was older, started taking me around the neighborhood and betting, hey, I bet you can't beat this girl in a race. Started making money off of it. And I was like, wait a minute here. Hold on. You can't be the only one making money. Me out here just running around. So,
right.
I have my own memory of how I really remembered or started to understand that I was fast, and it was out there racing in the streets or in the neighborhood.
Where did you grow up?
I'm born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and raised between Pittsburgh and Detroit. So my parents split up when I was 3. And, one of the things I always like to kind of like tell them that I'm proud of is that while they split up, they did a really good job of sharing me. So from kindergarten to 6th grade, I was with my mom in Detroit, and I'd go visit my dad for holidays and summers and stuff. And then from 7th to 12th grade, I was with my dad. And that wasn't like any court order or anything. It was just like the way life played itself out and who was best to look after me in that period of time. But yeah, I definitely claim both places.
So you have the duality of the D and in Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
So I know people in both places, and I know there are 2 distinctively different areas. So was there like an adjustment once you went from Detroit to Pittsburgh? What was the adjustment and becoming acclimated with that area by comparison to having spent so much time in the D?
Oh, well, yeah, it was night and day, actually. So Detroit is still, even though it is changing drastically moment by moment today, is still predominantly Black as a city. And Pennsylvania, I actually lived in a suburb called Rochester outside of Pittsburgh, was predominantly white. I actually ended up being the only Black girl in my graduating class. And it was big city life versus small town life. There's about 88 in my graduating class in my small town in Pennsylvania. So it was literally night and day. But I feel like I'm better for it. I'm more well-rounded because I had 2 completely different experiences growing up. So I can speak to, big city life and small town life.
So now, once you made it from the D to Rochester, PA, what was that like? You're racing boys your age, you're racing boys older than you. I don't know if that happened in Detroit or if that happened in Rochester. And so, at some point, I'm imagining that you started racing on a junior high and high school level, and they realized like, okay, we have something here. And I'm certain that you really stood out, especially in the class of '88. So what was that like?
Yeah, it was super cool. So I ran what we call age group track. Some people, it's USA Track and Field is the governing body of all Olympic sport, or for track and field specifically, but there's also
Mm-hmm.
AAU track. So I stuck in the USATF program part of the world, but I did it both in Pennsylvania and in Detroit. And like I said, that's one of the cool things about how my parents were just able to work it out. They were like, okay, let's find her a club that she can run at with, in Detroit this summer, because that's where she's staying this summer, or in Pennsylvania this summer. So I actually had 2 track clubs that I was a part of, as a result of the going back and forth. But they welcomed me with open arms. Regionally, it was the same kind of folks. So, we ran into the folks from Ohio, from Michigan, from Pennsylvania, etc. So I was already familiar with who my competitors were,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a cool experience. I actually didn't really love track. I'll be honest, from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. I was very active, like I said, very sporty. I loved basketball, but I stunk at basketball. And I did not evolve into a better player. I'm sure I went from like a 0 to a 1 over the course of time. I did improve
Right.
some, but basketball was never going to be that thing for me. As a matter of fact, I remember sitting the bench on senior night, and my best friend, who was like the star player on the team, got tired or got hurt. I don't remember what the situation was, but I went in for her in the fourth quarter after the game was already said and done, basically.
Wow. Talk to me about once you left high school. What was your ascent in the world of track and field? Did you go to college? Did you just start training for the Olympics, or how does one even qualify for the Olympics?
Yeah, so I am a very proud Miami Hurricane. It's all
The
about the
U.
U, right? And I had a few different options when I decided to go to college. Rice University was one, Cal Berkeley was another. And so, yeah, I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do, where I wanted to end up. There were some other schools that recruited me, but those were the main places that I took trips to. I
Mm-hmm.
ultimately chose the University of Miami, honestly, because it was sunny all the time and warm. I thought I was going to study on the beach. I was like, I'm going to take my books after class and go to the beach. This is the
Right.
best life. And, living in Michigan and Pennsylvania, like there's real winter. So I'm like, oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
hot here all the time. Especially if I'm going to be on a track scholarship, I need to be able to meet that obligation. And I don't like running outside in the cold.
Right.
So let me pick this hot place to go. That's all I could do with my 17-year-old brain. Sometimes people like to make it seem like it was such a fancy decision. It was like, this is far away from home. My parents can't drive to me. They got to take a plane, and it's hot.
Right. They can't
So
just they can't just pull up on me. I'm going to know when they're coming, and then I can they'll make all the proper adjustments and say, "Oh, look at me! I'm doing all of what I'm expected to do at school." So now, when you were at school, was the U in football, and then eventually they became pretty good basketball team as well. What was the athletic environment at the U when you were there?
yes, it was the best college experience of all time. So I arrived in 2001, fall of 2001. We won the national championship my first year. And this was great for me because I came from, like I said, even though it was small town Pennsylvania, we had just come off of 2 or 3 years of winning the state championship. So I was surrounded by winners. I was like,
Right.
I'm a winner. And I want to go to a school where there's winner. I didn't know anything about the football team and how it worked, or wasn't necessarily a fan, but I was like, "Ooh, I picked the right place. We are winners here."
Right.
Then we made it back to the national championship again the following year. We didn't win that year, but we were the U at that time. I think we had 5 first round draft picks my freshman year and 6 my
Mm-hmm.
sophomore year. That's when things were pumping. We
Right.
as athletes owned the city. It was a marvelous experience.
Did a lot of the football players, did they also run track?
Absolutely. I remember being at Penn Relays with Ed Reed and Clinton Portis and, all the different athletes that were doing really well at that time. Definitely competed in track and field as well. So they always sent them, when you get off the football field, you got to go with the track season, stay in shape.
Right.
Um, and yeah, it was never a dull moment. I can say that for sure. Andre Johnson as well. Yeah, we had a bunch of high quality, Hall of Fame style athletes that were also out there on the track with us.
Wow. So I'm sure once you made the transition to, start qualifying for the Olympics, it was like, I'm around winners, I'm around these future Hall of Famers. This is my normal from high school to college, having won national championships on the football field. So I'm assuming the track team, did they have that same level of success as well?
We didn't have exactly the same level of success, but it was definitely a time to just like really embrace reaching your full potential. I think across all of the athletics that we had at the University of Miami, everybody was better for the energy that the football team brought to us. Like you said, everybody won more, everybody worked harder because that energy was electric throughout the athletic department, and we were like a family. You know, there's this great big old university, and we're a pretty small school actually. I think a lot of people don't realize that it's a small private school despite being Division One. And so this athletic department was very, very tight knit, and everybody was, encouraging one another. I remember at one point at, Edrin James coming into the weight room in the middle of our practice one morning, and I'm like huffing and puffing, and I'm bent over, and he's like, Hurricanes are never tired. Get up off your knees. Get your hands up. What are you doing? Like it was that level of accountability that we were all expected to adhere to, regardless of what sport you were participating in.
I just seen Andre Johnson, and he was just talking about some of the people that played when he played. And we're talking like Hall of Fame athletes. It's only 11 positions on defense and offense. So with that being said, Vince Wilfork, he wasn't even starting. And then he was just saying Frank Gore, he was second string. And then he was just talking about all of the different people, that he played with. And he was just like easily the best football team of all time. To just talk about all of the greats that, as great as they were in the NFL at the time, that when they were at the U, they weren't even starting.
Right.
And then all of the starters, they had all of those first round draft picks, and it was just like a factory. So I'm certain that was contagious. So now, with that being said, I'm preparing for the Olympics, or what does that journey consist of?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different for everybody. It's not a kind of one size fits all journey for how you end up as an Olympian. But the actual criteria is that you go to the USA Championships that take place in June every year. And you get top 3 at the USA Championships. So you need to run a qualifying time sometime before the championships, not anywhere, at a certified track and field meet. And that qualifying time will allow you to be able to participate in the championships. And then the top 3 there will go on to the Olympics. So my particular journey was, I was a junior in college, and I was just trying to win the NCAA championships that year. So my freshman year, I made it to the NCs, and I think I got last place actually. But it's pretty cool as a freshman to make the national championships. Right. Sophomore year, I was kind of middle of the pack. And my junior year, I had kind of this chip on my shoulder. I was like, I beat some of these girls, at other races when it was less important. Like, I can do this. I can beat these girls. I can win the national championship. And so I did. I got to nationals. I won the championship. And the time that I had run was the second fastest time in the world so far for the year. And so at that point, I'm a junior in college. There's people that are full-time professional athletes that are trying to make this Olympic team because it's an Olympic year. And I've run faster than all of them up to this point. So I had to immediately turn my focus from, okay, I'm a junior in college, to, wow, I have a real chance to be one of those top 3 at the Olympic trials. And what does it look like for me to leave school? Because this is pre-NIL days. So you had to give up your eligibility if you wanted to make money and, pursue a career as a professional track and field athlete. And one thing I've always been really grateful for is my coach, because she sat me down and she said, my job is to keep you here. That's what's in the best interest of the university and me, looking good. But I'm trying to do what's in the best interest of you. And you might not ever get this opportunity again. It's an Olympic year. You might be fast again next year. I plan for you to be fast as long as you're working with me, but it won't be an Olympic year and your earning potential won't be the same. So you need to go strike while the iron is hot. And so I gave up my eligibility. I, went to the Olympic trials, which you don't have to give your eligibility to go to the trials. You can go to the trials, get the top 3, and then, take your behind back to the university after all is said and done. You just can't accept any money. But I decided to accept the money and go to the trials.
I need that bag.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, I got 3rd at the Olympic trials, made the team, got over to Athens, Greece, and I got the silver medal after it was all said and done. My first time around.
That's phenomenal. When you first got to the U, was that even something that you had on your radar, or you was just looking to try to figure out how you can hold it down on the college level?
I actually just wanted the free education. So I come from a family that didn't have a whole lot of money. I
Mm-hmm.
have 5 sisters and 2 brothers. My dad had leukemia.
Mm.
So, he spent a lot of time not being able to work and only receiving disability. My mom was a school teacher. It just, it's not the saddest story you'll ever hear, but we
Mm.
didn't have a whole lot. There were no 529 plans or college funds or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. And they were very, very set on making sure that I had good academics. So, until the point that I realized I had some talent in track and field and that there was a such thing as a track scholarship, I have been hoping and, preparing for an academic scholarship. So my grades were in great shape. And I took very seriously what it meant to be able to get an education, because the way my parents taught it to me, that was the thing that was going to take me places and open doors for me. So the real, excitement for me in going to the University of Miami was, oh my gosh, this woman just wants me to run in a circle, which I'm already good at doing, and she's going to pay for my whole education at this fancy school. Like, count me in. Um, I just wanted the free education. I was so grateful. I wanted to repay her for that. And I was like, the least I can do is work my butt off on this track, because
Right.
she's giving me what I really want, which is the education and the opportunity to better myself.
With that being said, was it a tough sell to your parents to say, hey, listen, despite how important my education is, I'm going to leave school and I'm going to pursue this Olympic dream of mine that has now become a reality, courtesy of how well I'm excelling with the track and field?
Not at all. It was an easy sell. My parents knew how talented I was. They knew that it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. But above and beyond that, like, I was still getting my education. So I wrote it into my first contract with my sponsor, Nike, that they were going to pay for the rest of my education. I wasn't dropping out of school. I was going to take their check and finish.
Oh, okay.
And I was also ahead. So I was on track to finish school early, and I did finish in 3.5 years. So all I had to do is, when I returned to the Olympics, finish one more semester of school, and I was done, and I could focus full time on being a professional athlete. So there was no reason for my parents to worry, because my grades were already good. They knew it was important to me, so important that I made sure that my agent made sure they were going to pay for my education, since the scholarship couldn't anymore.
What was your major at the U?
I was a finance major, interesting enough.
Now, what kind of led you to that major?
Once again, everybody always wants to make it sound fancy, but at 17, I think anyone listening right now, go back to your 17 or 18-year-old self. You have to admit, you didn't know what was happening in life. And your 21-year-old self, which is the normal age to get done with college, your 25-year-old self, for the first time, you can now rent a car without that insurance. I feel like that's the last time you become an adult. Like,
Right.
I look back on all of those ages and I was like, I was not a grown-up. Well, how do they call us grown-ups? How do they expect us to survive during those times? But I chose finance because I like math and I like money. And I was like, okay, finance is math and money. That sounds good to me. I didn't know what I was going to be. I didn't have plans for what I was going to do life after sport. I just knew that I needed to go to college. I needed to get an education. And this seemed like a reasonable thing to do, math and money.
I want the bag, and then I want to learn how to manage the bag once I get it.
Right.
Which makes all the sense in the world. Being in Athens, Greece, and going there and coming back with a silver medal, being on that podium. What was that experience in and of itself like?
It was like being a deer in headlights, because if you had asked me earlier in the year if I was going to the Olympics, I would not even have known it was a possibility. So for all these things to kind of just like overnight happen, you go to sleep the night before the NCAA championships and you're a junior in college, and you feel the pressure of wanting to, win in the finals, to not only do you win, but you blow like your previous fastest time out of the water, and your life literally changed overnight. Like, I could have never said that I was planning for that to happen in that year. So to get there, to be on the podium, to be looking at a stadium full of people, to see the way that, the support came from my 2 hometowns. So yeah, a little side story is that people in Detroit got together because, like I said, our family didn't have a whole lot of money, and raised money for my mom to be able to go to Greece, because it also happens all very last minute. That's one piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't know about the Olympics, is that most of our trials are June and July. There are various processes for various sports, but big sports, they want the fastest, strongest, best flipper. Gymnastics, swimming, and track, we all have our Olympic trials in June or July. And the Olympics are typically in August. Sometimes they've been in July and they've been late August, but you basically have 1 month, from the time that you make the team, because they want the best people. They want the person that shows the best fitness. What does that mean though? Do your parents buy all their stuff a year in advance when there's 25 people competing in your event and only 3 people are going to make it? Like, it's a hard thing to do. So it's very expensive. There's not a clear like package or anything like that in place. So we're all scrambling at the last minute, paying higher prices to go to a foreign country. And my dad had leukemia, as I mentioned. So what Pennsylvania did, like, they raised the money for him to be able to go on the trip. And they actually ended up raising so much money that we were able to take, I think it was 8 people total to the Olympic Games. So all my little sisters were able to leave the country for the first time. It was just like super cool to see like people say like, hey, this is our girl. We're going to go hard for our hometown and make sure that they have everything they need. And a gentleman who had also had some sort of illness that was actually like a millionaire pitched in because his healthcare, my dad's healthcare was not going to be covered when he was abroad. So he paid for all of his medical treatments while he was in Greece. So just like, it was amazing. The original question was like, what did it feel like? Like, it just took happiness to a whole new level.
I can imagine. And then to see that your community was there to stand up, not just for you, but your family. And I'm certain that they said, look, we this is a once in a lifetime experience, and we don't want the financial barriers to prevent them from seeing their daughter compete in the World Games. Now, you won the silver medal. And what was the event again that you won the silver medal for?
100 meters. So short, straight to the point, the sprints.
Olympian. But that was also my sport. I feel like the 100-meter dash is like the heavyweight championship of the Olympics. So because you're going to be considered the fastest person in the world if you win, or one of the fastest people in the world, if you hit that stage. I know what that was like on a state level. I can only imagine what that's like on a global level. So now when you came back to the U, I'm certain that you had a new reality that you were experiencing, not just on campus, but just as soon as you hit U.S. soil. So talk to me about what that adjustment for you was like.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like I said, one, winning the silver is not winning the gold, and I think people take for granted like it is a grand accomplishment to go off and to go into, let me see, like I said, to be the second fastest person in the whole world. And a lot of people were excited. I was famous in Miami because the city, really pushed it in the media. They're like, hey, we got a hometown girl. We got this, University of Miami athlete that's competing. So I was recognized kind of here and there. But, it is also a situation where, like I said, football rules in the city that I'm from. So I wasn't like gangbusters kind of like, can't go anywhere, being mobbed by people. I imagine, like A-Rod lived in Miami, or like some of these football players I mentioned, these big names, like they literally couldn't go anywhere without being recognized. While it happened frequently for me, it wasn't like so much so that it was, I had to get security. And also, you don't become a millionaire overnight either from this sport. So, my first contract with Nike was around $200,000. And that's a significant amount of money for a 20-year-old.
Absolutely.
Especially back in 2004.
Right.
But in the same vein, NFL players get $20 million sign-in bonuses. So, I had this kind of same level of accomplishment that, like I said, NFL players or other, pro athletes have, but it didn't come with the same level of notoriety or the same level of income. So there was some built-in humility there that wouldn't allow me to get too big of a head. And as I mentioned, I wasn't done with school. So I went right back to the university and had to get back into school. The president, the ad drop period or whatever was over. She made sure to talk to the professors and make sure like, hey, she's a little bit behind, but y'all catch her up. Like, she wants to go into this semester. She doesn't want to wait another semester to go to school. And we're going to make sure that she has what she needs to be able to succeed. So it was cool. It was nice to see so many people proud that so many people tuned in. But it also kind of, like I said, it faded off into the sunset, I think, a little bit quicker than people would imagine.
So now, once you graduate from University of Miami, did you just become a full-time track and field athlete, or did you transition into some other things professionally?
Yeah, so I was a full-time professional athlete from 2004 until 2013, I'll say,
Mm-hmm.
technically. And I had a sponsor, like I said, my main sponsor was Nike from 2004 to 2009, and then from 29 to 2013 was Saucony. It's a little less popular known brand, but it's a really good running shoe, especially for
Mm-hmm.
distance runners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that was kind of like my main source of income, but I was, to your point, always preparing for like what happens if I fall down and break my leg, because this is not the kind of money that, you retire from life. Like, you can, a Usain Bolt kind of person that gets a lot of marketing opportunities. And I will say things have changed. So while there was other sponsorship opportunities, leading up to the Olympic Games, like the next time coming around and, the following times that I made it, it wasn't exactly as it is now, where athletes are telling their story on social media. They got millions or hundreds of thousands of followers. Those things didn't exist for me. And so the marketing, the deals, and the other ancillary income that athletes are receiving now was a lot smaller. And so I had to keep my head on straight. I got a real estate license. I started to learn Spanish. I started to learn sign language. I was doing internships. So while I didn't have to do any of those things to earn money, I was always trying to make sure that I had something going on, that if I fell down and broke my leg, like you said, I could cut the switch on and start getting some income from it, or I had something to put on my resume that would, at least get my foot in the door so that I could get going in something else.
What was it like as your track and field career was nearing its end? Did you already have things in place to just walk into something new, or did you have to start from ground zero?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about life is that you're always preparing for the next thing that's coming, whether you know it or not. It's all a matter of how you think of things. It's all a matter of the perspective that you're keeping. Because, like I said, I didn't know that I was going to become an Olympian. Literally, I was preparing to win the national championships, and I got so prepared that I ended up going on to this next thing, which was the Olympics. And I say that with you have to take both the good and the bad and think of it like that.
Right.
So, backstory for me is that, during my course of my career, I had two financial advisors, and neither of them did the best work for me. So when you
Mm.
get $200,000 and you don't come from a family where anybody is earning $200,000, you're like, whoa, I'm rich. And I had enough knowledge as a junior in college that majored in finance to know that I really didn't know anything and that I needed
Mm.
to enlist the help of someone else. So that's what I did, was get a financial advisor. But like I said, I didn't know there were different types of financial advisors. Most of the world doesn't. I think, especially in the Black community, a lot of people don't come from a background where your parents had a financial planner in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not talking to you. Like, they might be talking to you about money, maybe, which is,
Mm-hmm.
slim to none. But even if they're talking to you about it, they're not talking to you about it from a standpoint of, I work with this person who's helping us get organized, and you need to work with the person to help you get organized. Most of us are
Mm-hmm.
first generation figuring out that there is a profession, there's a person that you can hire as part of your money team to help you. So I
Mm-hmm.
was lucky to know that I needed help, and I got somebody on my money team. I just didn't pick the right person because I didn't know what to ask, and nobody around me knew what to ask. Fired him, hired another guy, thought that was going to go better. It didn't. In fact, that second company that I hired ended up shutting down completely because they had a bunch of NFL players as their clients, and they invested their clients in this casino. The casino never opened, so they all lost their money. It was just like a huge, I think there's like a 60-minute show on it. So I'm
Oh,
fortunate
wow.
in the sense that, like, I didn't have the millions of dollars that they had, so that I didn't get to invest in casino and lose out in that way. But I wasn't well cared for. Nobody got me more financially literate. It's like I was trying to do the right thing with my money. And I think this story is not told as often as the athlete had a lot of money and went broke situation. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not an advisor that's educating your athlete, they're not going to have the resources they need to be successful. Money is not the only resource that you need to be successful. You have to have knowledge. You have to have support. You have to have people in your corner that are not trying to take advantage of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to get back to your original part about, like, hey, how'd you transition? How'd you decide you want to do a financial advisor thing? I I had a bad experience, and I realized, like, there was a gap in the way that people were being served, and I was like, I feel like this industry is doing a disservice to young professionals because there are people out here who are making money. And by this time, I have friends that have become doctors and lawyers over the course of, the 10 years that I have been competing in sport, and they didn't have financial advisors. And I'm just like, wait, but you're making like, $200,000 a year or something like, and everybody had some very vague and aloof answer to what they were doing with their money, because we also make it very, inappropriate to talk about money. We don't talk about sex. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about the Lord, and we don't talk about money. It's all very damaging. We need to be talking about everything. And so what I realized is, like I said, this gap existed. And I did a Google search, which good old fashioned, internet brought me the certified financial planning coursework. And it was the closest thing to what I felt like was comprehensive in the nature of helping me understand the whole aspect of my finances. Because there's another popular certification, Series 7. And we hear a lot about that in the Black community. Like, the advisors that we come into contact with, like, oh, I got a Series 7. They're like, ooh, you got a Series 7? You must be smart.
Be official.
You must be official.
Right.
And I'm not going to throw shade at, the people who only carry that license, but that license is really made for you to be able to sell investment products and earn a commission for selling investment products. That does not look at your whole financial picture. They don't teach you anything about budgeting, about taxes, about insurance, about estate planning, about student loan debt. None of that comes with the Series 7. It is literally just invest your money, which is another bad narrative that I think we have in the Black community, is that I just got to invest my money. I got to find some money. I got to find the next investment. Like, we're always trying to get rich quick when we don't realize that we need a full holistic financial picture. You need to be thinking about your kids' education and, what vehicle do I put them in order for your finances to make the most of that money? How am I properly insured to make sure that if I'm not here anymore, my kids are taken care of situation? What does it look like for me to be tax efficient? Well, easiest thing a lot of people can do is put money in their 401k. Nobody talks about that. Everybody's trying to invest in, individual stocks or open this thing or take this investing course. Like, you got a thing that you could put $23,000 in every year. It's going to lower your tax liability. And your money's going to be invested, and you don't have to be a guru of anything. Keep being a professional, whatever it is that is your profession, and just put your money in this one thing, and you're going to be all right. Or you're going to be much better off. Most people are not, and most Black people specifically, are not doing things that are basic, like putting money in your 401k. So I know I'm getting on a little bit of a soapbox, but
that's all good. Now, but that's information that we need to hear, though.
Exactly. This transition came out of me not being serviced appropriately and me realizing that we were not being serviced appropriately. And so once I started to learn financial information for myself, I started to share it with the people around me. And then I realized, like, hey, I could do this for a living. I would love doing this. I see the value in this. I think others will see the value in it. They will compensate me for what I know and learn, and I can share that with my community. So that's the very long story short to my transition.
There's a lot of conversations that we don't have, and money is one of them. Yeah, and you can't say money without talking insurance, because we've had conversations on the podcast before talking about the importance of having afterlife conversations. Many people, they don't have those conversations with their parents. They don't have those conversations with their loved ones. So then when they're no longer with us, not only do we find ourselves scrambling because those conversations were never had and we don't know where any of the particulars are. And then sometimes, to your point, when we do find where the particulars are, there are no particulars.
Right. That right there. Or like you said, like, even if there was a little bit of particulars, it's all tied up in something you can't get access to because you don't have the password. You don't have the key. You're not the right person. XYZ. And the thing that hurts my heart the most is that so-and-so passed away and, they had 100,000 million trillion Instagram followers and now they're doing a GoFundMe. And you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
This was a doctor. This was a lawyer. Why are we GoFundMe for XYZ? And sometimes it is not that they don't have nothing, but they don't have everything set up appropriately for you to be able to access it. It's going to be years or months or, God knows how long until you can actually get access to it. But sometimes, and more times than not, it's because they don't have anything.
Yeah, right. So I'm certain that when you made that transition, I'm sure that a lot of those conversations you were having with your fellow athletes probably was surprising in nature, things that they didn't consider. from what I'm understanding, you found that there was a void. Like, I can't be the only person that got taken advantage of. I watched the
For 30 broke,
30
right?
for 30 broke. So I mean, I seen these brothers. I'm like, man, that's crazy. But it makes total sense. This is a person that his focus was ball, whether it was football or basketball or baseball, whatever the sport may be, his focus was on ball. And he didn't educate himself about the particulars as it relates to the money he's making. He put all of his faith and trust into what this person told him and what other people told him about that person.
I was just going to say, it's a huge disservice that financial advisors do. And that's one thing that drives me insane. And another reason I joined this industry is because they're like, don't worry your pretty little head. I got this over here. You just play ball. You just do your thing. And that is the worst thing you can do, because you don't give them, like you said, such a crucial resource, which is baseline education to be able to handle themselves, to be able to adult, to be able to move on in life. And so they collect all your money, they invest all your money for you, but they didn't give you the tools to do a budget. You out there making it rain in the club because you don't understand that the money is not unlimited. It feels very unlimited when you've lived off of $300-400 a month, and now you got $300,000-400,000 a month coming in. You think you can't run out, but you absolutely can. And it is so sad to hear that people, a lot of the people that went broke had an advisor the whole time. And it wasn't that the advisor stole their money. Sometimes it was, but it was simply that the advisor didn't do a good job because they didn't educate the athlete on how to keep the money. All they did was focusing on making their commission in the moment based on what was in that investment account until it dwindled down to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think celebrities and athletes surround themselves by yes men and women? And like, you know what? I've mentioned to him that there should be a budget he should be following, but he's really not trying to hear that. And if I keep on force feeding him what it is he should do, he may get rid of me and then I'm not going to make my commission. Does that happen? Or do you think that they just, quite frankly, don't give a damn? And they're like, look, as long as I make my commission, I don't really care what happens to you after your sport of choice, because guess what? I'm moving on to the next.
Exactly. So there's a little bit of both. Like you said, not all athletes are making poor financial decisions. We do a lot of blanket, talk. And, in a short conversation like this, like we can only cover so much, or, the various things that we're seeing in places, like you said, the 30 for 30 broke, it was all bad news. It didn't talk about anybody doing awesome.
Right.
But that is not the story for everybody. There are a lot of athletes out there making great financial decisions. There's a lot of them out there that are asking the right questions, making sure that they have the right people on their team, firing fast when they realize that it is not the right person on their team. And there's a lot of good financial advisors out there. There are some excellent people that are going above and beyond to make sure that the clients that they're working with are not just athletes, but they are people, and they're investing in them. They're investing in their financial literacy. They're trying to talk them off the ledge when they start to make bad decisions or when they think about making decisions. But to your point, there are bad advisors. There are, bad athletes that just don't, just can't hear it. And I fired athletes. I've been running a fully functional financial planning firm for the last 8 years. And when I, time after time again, kept telling you to do this thing, it's like, it becomes a liability for me, because what is going to happen? That athlete goes broke and they say Lauryn was their financial advisor. Right. Like, I don't want that in my life. Right. I don't want that on my reputation. And if the athlete, like you said, is not willing to become literate, what do they say? They're just like, well, I had an advisor and Lauryn ain't really helped me. And, like that's not sufficient. I can't have people running around saying that about me when I told you time and time again. So I usually have a last conversation with clients before I fire them. And I said, it's not me, it's you. But here's the things you need to do. I care about you. I can't take you any further until you decide you want to go further. And here's what you need to do to go further. And I make sure I document it as I offboard as well. Like, you are headed on a poor financial path. Here's some things you need to fix, in order to be financially solvent in the future. So that way, they might not be ready to hear it now, but they will be able to refer back to that in the future. And they can't say nobody ever told them. They can't say that Lauryn didn't do the right thing for me. Oh, she abandoned me. She left me on my own. You can put that narrative in your head if you want. But if you ever refer back to that email or that conversation that we had, you're going to know that I was trying everything I could until I couldn't try anymore. And I had to move on to the next, quote unquote.
And that's smart, because you're right. A lot of times, let's face it, if I don't want to hear your advice now. That's just indicative of somebody that doesn't want to take responsibility for their decisions. So once it goes bad, they're going to immediately try to figure out, who can I blame? Who can I point the finger at? I'm going to point it at Lauryn. What happened? Yo, man, I had this financial advisor. She's a former athlete. You know, she's an Olympian, and I still went broke. Like, nah, hold on. Wait a minute. See this email. See what you were told during the, during the process.
Numerous meetings that we had before I fired you. Right.
Exactly. And no, with that being said, do some of those athletes, almost like the boyfriend or girlfriend you break up with, do they come back like, you right? You know, I'm ready to get right and do the things that you told me I should have done 6 months ago. I'm ready to do them now. Does that happen?
Absolutely. And I was so surprised, you know, like, because I said, this work for me is very, very passion based. And I definitely want to help every single person that I interact with become more financially literate, become more wealthy, etc. And so it pained me the first time I had to fire a client, but I was like, I literally can't go on like this. And I was just like, gosh, I wonder about them. I lose sleep over them sometimes. Like, I hope they're okay. Look, I see them on Instagram and I'm like, woo, doesn't look like they've improved at all. And you don't know initially when you fire that first client, or, you know, any client for that matter, whether or not they're going to come back or whether they're going to ever acknowledge that they weren't making good decisions. But they did. They started to circle back and say like, hey, and regular clients as well. You know, I work with regular individuals. You know, I realize now that I wasn't in a good place. I've, you know, taken care of XYZ, thank you so much. And I've been surprised with the number of people that have actually circled back and, you know, and took it more seriously the second time around.
Now, as far as athletes, are you saturated in a particular sport, or it doesn't necessarily matter? Do you cover the whole gamut, track and field, football, basketball? What type of athlete would you consider your client base to consist of?
Yeah, so this is a good question as we can transition to the next thing is that I worked with mainly Olympic athletes. I did have some opportunities with NFL players, but I never successfully signed an NFL player or any other like big three kind of sports. So when I say big three, I think like hockey, baseball, actually a big four, I guess, and basketball. I had a series of NFL players be prospective clients, but I never spoke to the player directly. So this is yet another problem. Their parent called, their cousin called, their uncle called, somebody called on their behalf, and they were financially illiterate as well. I remember one gentleman saying like, hey, you know, I hear all this stuff you're telling me, but let's just cut to the chase. Like, how fast can you double his money? Because I don't want to hear about these ETF funds and stuff that other people are talking about. We ain't trying to make this basic money. We trying to make this real money. And I was just like, this is the person that thinks he's doing what's in the best interest of the athlete and interviewing on behalf of the athlete because the athlete can't interview on for himself.
Right.
And I'm like, he's not going to win at life. And, you know, you don't double somebody's money in XYZ amount of time. And that's not the thing that's important. This athlete needs to know and understand how to budget, how to, you know, pay a bill as an example. Like these cars that he's buying, these houses that they're buying, like houses come with a 30-year mortgage. You might have a 5-year career and you got 25 more years to pay on that that house or that car, whatever the thing is. Right. Like, you know, like let's think beyond, like I said, once again, this investment piece of the puzzle and like, you know, making the money triple and double and just getting rich quick. And so it was really disheartening for me because I did want to work in that space, but it was really hard as a female to be in that space. There's a lot of pay for play. So like advisors paying, you know, a parent's bills or something like that, or taking them out to Roof Chris, renting a Bentley, you know, doing a lot of showing off versus the person actually interviewing the advisor and seeing like, is this a good fit? Is this a good personality fit for me? Can I make good decisions? So with all that being said, like I said, most of that was Olympic clients that I ended up serving from an athlete standpoint. And I did work with other people, but I have actually, as of August, transitioned to a one-to-many sort of service environment. So what I was coming up against, and I think we talked about this a little bit earlier when you were talking, was about like impact. How can I have the greatest impact? Well, there's only a limited number of people that I can work with on a one-on-one basis. And there's 75 million millennials in this country. Right. Like, not saying I'm going to get to all of them, but when I was at a household, you know, 50 clients or so, like I was starting to feel like I was at max capacity and I was totally invested in these 50 people. And there were tons more people coming my way that needed help. And so I started to do a lot of hourly work, project work, and, just trying to get people headed in the right direction. And what I realized, like I said, to the point of my passion is around empowering people, not enabling them. And I feel like financial planning sometimes, like you said, I'm not saying don't get a financial advisor. You do need one. But a lot of people were paying me so they didn't have to worry about the problem. And I was enabling them. Versus what I really want to do is empower people to be able to take control of their finances and at least be able to do some of the basic things on their own. You might need an advisor because you have more intricate things going on. You got more complexity to your overall financial picture that takes our expertise to help you handle it. But you should not understand your 401k. That's a basic piece of personal finance. You should not understand, bank accounts, which savings account to get. You shouldn't be without a budget. You shouldn't have the basic, how to read through your tax return and understand if your advisor made a mistake. You shouldn't, not be able to go to brunch with your friends and talk about why you have $3 million of life insurance and what type of life insurance you have and why it makes sense for you and your family. I always tell people I want you to be able to easily describe what your financial plan is without being able to say I have this much money in the bank, without being able to say I make this much money, because people get scared to talk about finances because it's related to these numbers. I'm like, yes, there are numbers involved, but you should be able to sit in a room full of your friends and talk money without them knowing either of the two things I just mentioned and still have a happy, healthy, productive conversation. And so what I do now is financial retreats in Colombia. So I live in Medellin, Colombia. I didn't say that yet either. And so I bring people here in small groups, maximum 8 people. And I teach you about basic financial things. So I've written a 12-part curriculum. I walk you through all the various parts of personal finance. I talk you through the money mindset piece of it, because that's not, in the books or the CFP coursework that I did. I talk you through your environment and how that's affecting you. You said the people around you and how that might be making you spend more or less, or, the kind of habits that are being created because of the environment that you're in. We walk through spending with purpose. So spending with purpose is about hey, you can go to Walmart and get a candle for $1, but maybe you want to go get one from a small business that costs $10. And that's not necessarily a bad financial decision. The cheapest thing is not always the best thing. But if you have organized finances, you can afford the $10 candle and support that business and realize that it's $10 for that company because they got to put money in their own 401k. They don't have a match as an entrepreneur. They've got to pay for their own health insurance. They don't have those things. The products cost more because they got to order the glasses from here. They got to fill them up themselves and put the wax in. Whereas, Walmart is mass producing them, and that's why they cost $1. So I'm challenging people to think beyond what the actual dollar amount is of what's being spent, and to really focus on spending with purpose, in addition to, like I said, estate planning, taxes, insurance, whatever. You leave this retreat, so you first are taken outside of your environment, because the other thing that happens for people is they're like, yeah, I want to do better, but I'm busy, I got this going on, I got that, da, da, da. So come spend a week. What do people want to do? They want to go on vacation. So I'm giving you the reward that you want. Come on vacation, but also come home with a financial plan. You're going to have a whole workbook with all these pieces of the puzzle figured out, and you're going to be more empowered to handle your finances. And if I can serve, 8 people at a time and do that on a more regular basis, that's going to allow me to have a bigger impact than serving, 50 people for the rest of my life and only being able to help those 50. I also go into companies and I, implement this same 12-part curriculum that I wrote. So sometimes I do half of it in person and then we do the other half online. But my thing is making it more accessible to the masses and making sure that it's professional advice. Because the other thing that's happening right now is we have a lot of people that are doing the financial talk on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And they just woke up one morning and decided ooh, this is a good market to be in. I can make a lot of money off of it. I'm going to just start telling people stuff about money and making them buy my course or this or that or whatever. And it's just straight foolishness, text me tax free if you never want to pay taxes again. You sound crazy. People got to pay your taxes. So I really want to be a source of integrity in the financial industry. And I want to have a bigger impact on who I'm able to serve. And so I've gone to this one-to-many model where I'm going into, like I said, businesses, or people can come off on their own and, get in a group and really get transparent and build a financial plan. Because we got mental wellness retreats. We got yoga retreats. Why are we not doing financial retreats? It's the one thing that everybody has in common that they have to do and manage. You're going to have to organize your finances. There's going to be a point where you can't work anymore. And whether you be like, oh, I love my job, I'm going to work forever. Like, you physically will not be able to work forever. You have to sit down somewhere, and you don't know when that's going to be. And so you should be preparing for that time to come.
That makes total sense. Everybody likes to travel. No one is going to turn down a good getaway. So I'm going to give you a getaway, and then you're going to come back with something more than just stories. You're going to come back with insight and foresight on what your financial future should look like. I know this is a conversation that our viewers and listeners are going to find very rewarding. And I'm certain that there's more that people can receive from, all of the different expertise that you offer. If they want to find more about the retreat and things of that nature, like, where would they go to find that information?
Yeah, my website is worth-winning.com. Very simple, straight to the point. My company is called Worth Winning. And for me, it is named that way because what I learned over my career as an athlete is that, you got to really think about the things that are worth winning. What we do is get really focused on accomplishments. I want to be the world record holder. I want to be the 100-meter champion. But accomplishments are a moment in time. And, you hear it all the time in, various motivational speeches. It's about the journey. It really is about the journey. And that was the one thing that stood out to me after my sports career was over, was I got to stand on the podium and, for a moment in time, I got to hang out, but it was like, what's for lunch after this? So people were like, oh, what did it feel like in that moment to stand on the podium? Like, it was awesome, but yet, like, life went on. Like,
right.
you might need to go to the bathroom after. Like I said, you might be hungry. You might need to eat lunch. Like, it is literally a moment in time. Everything I went through along the way, all the people that supported me along the way, the people that raised money for me to be able to get to that podium moment, like, the journey was the thing that's important. And so we really got to think about, like, what in life is worth winning before we go, like, after what we want to win. Like, we can't just, I want to get $1 million in the bank. Well, like, okay, you won the $1 million. Like, what? Like, is your life, are you healthy? Are you happy? Are you sick? Like, what's going on? Like, what is worth it? As we go, we approach success and winning. So the company is Worth Winning, and the website is Worth-Winning.
I tell people all the time, Lauren, don't focus on the trophy, focus on the race. Because a lot of times people, they're focusing on the outcome. I want to become rich. I want this. I want that. Whether it's fame, whether it's fortune, you have to fall in love with the journey in order to fully reap the benefits of what that journey has to offer. Because if we want to use a sports analogy, most athletes, whether you're talking Tom Brady, whoever, even all of the members you mentioned at the U, they said, look, if we make practice hard, the game will be easy. So you have to figure out, what can I do to prepare myself? And I know I'm plugging the name of the podcast. How can I prepare myself for takeoff? And whatever that consists of, how can I get all the financial literacy that's going to serve me, not just now, but later? How can I make health a priority, because health is wealth? And that's mental health as well, because a lot of times people find themselves in miserable circumstances, and because misery doesn't necessarily have a face, they don't realize that can impede your health circumstances. So enjoyed this conversation, and I want to give you the opportunity to leave us with 3 things that you feel will help our viewers and listeners prepare for takeoff.
The first thing I would say, plan a trip somewhere. Colombia for a financial retreat would be my first option, but literally go anywhere, because traveling gives you perspective. Experience a new culture, experience a new place, experience a different way of doing things. It will open your mind so that you can change overall, like, your perspective, and change the way that you're doing things. It will change your behavior when you can experience something that you've never experienced before. I went to Africa a few times, and most recently in March. And my mind is blown by the amount of happiness that people have, even though they don't have a lot. In America, we get so stuck on consume, who has the best this, who has the best that. Like, traveling to a place where, like, there is not a conversation about an Apple phone or a Mac computer or any electronic device, because your only option is to go outside and swim or play, or you get a ball and everybody gets to play with it in the whole community. It's not your soccer ball. Will give you some perspective about, like, what's really important in life. So thing number 1, plan a trip somewhere. Thing number 2, I would say take a moment to speak to a financial professional. So this is not a plug for me at all. I actually don't work with individuals anymore. I only do 1 hour like kind of coaching sessions. So the financial advising that we've been talking so much about during the course of this, like I said, that is the base of how I got started in this industry, but I am now the one to many thing. And one of the things I do cover as part of those 12 parts is, what questions do you ask a financial planner? How do you, go through and make sure you're doing your diligence, because like they are not all created equally. And sometimes if you've never worked with someone, you're just like, oh, he sounds nice, he talks a good game. Like you need to understand like where the buzzwords might be or what questions you need to ask. I actually have a free webinar on this. So if you want to check it out on my website, you can just, go through that part of it. Like questions to ask before you hire a financial planner and what you need to be thinking about, because I'm so passionate about people working with someone, but working with the right someone.
Right.
Thing number 3, eat well. There's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. And I think, like I said, especially as brown people, what we don't do well is, think about, like you said, the long-term effects of what we're doing right now. I love some collard greens and cornbread and candy yams and macaroni and cheese as much as the next person. But when you have a diet that is based in, what is unhealthy on a day-to-day basis, and you decide, like, you don't think about it, like what you're doing right now is going to affect you 20 years from now, 30 years from now. At the point at which your arteries are already clogged up, you can't be like, oh, I want to change my diet and start to exercise. Like you can, but that's not going to unclog what you've already done. And that is the hardest thing, I think, for us to understand. And for me, this is coming from, I have a sister that is 7 years younger than me, and she had a stroke. And so to have a stroke in your 30s is a huge deal. And I realized, like, we come from the same background, the same upbringing. Yes, I have the Olympics and, I did a lot of more activity, but my diet was not A++. And I was actually pretty heavy. I lost about 15 pounds, 20 pounds since she had her stroke. But, life after sport was hard. I'm sitting in front of a computer a lot. And I'm eating those same kind of foods that make me feel good, but they're not good for me. And what I didn't realize was I also wasn't actually feeling very good. And so her stroke actually helped me change the way that I was thinking about like what's going to happen for me long term, because like I said, you get 30, 40 years down the road, or like I said, maybe you've already done the damage in your, age group growing up. You've been raised on bologna sandwiches and processed food and meat, just like I was. We can't undo what we've already eaten, but we can change the way that what we're doing right now, because this is an investment in our future. And so when we start talking about investments paying dividends and retirement funds and things like that, if you don't save now, you won't have any money in the future. If you don't change your diet now, you won't be able to change the effects of what the diet has done to the inside of your body in the future. So take a trip, talk to a financial professional, and eat well. Those are things you need to be ready for takeoff.
If someone wants to follow you on social, how can they find you so they kind of have a full understanding of your journey and life as you know it?
100%. I spend most of my time on Instagram. So you can find me personally at Lauryn C. Williams on Instagram. And I spell my name Lauryn with the Y. I'm sure this will be in the show notes, so you can check it out. And then the company is Worth Winning. You can also find them on Instagram. So it's just Worth Winning, all one word. There's no spaces on Instagram. We all know that. I am on the other platforms, Twitter, Facebook, etc. But like I said, the main place where I'm placing content on a regular basis is going to be Instagram. And then you can find my website, lauryn-williams.com. That's for speaking engagements and things related to being an Olympian. And then the website is worth-winning.com for all things financial literacy.
I was definitely enlightened by all of these words of wisdoms that you shared with me, you shared with our viewers and listeners. Every week, we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals and rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations are going to definitely help you prepare for takeoff. Lauryn, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Terry.